All right, here's an interesting one. This is from an article. Can't remember exactly where it's from. I think it might be New York Mag, but I'm not sure. It's our title article is "Do Cheese Exactly 25% Out of Your League," and the article talks about how people date aspirationally. They kind of pump themselves up, and all people try to date up, men and women alike, especially online. And this article is centered around a professor of sociology, Elizabeth Bruch, at the University of Michigan. And she has a new study out about online dating. I'll actually put the link to the study in the description along with the article. But I'm going to read this because the article is kind of long, but there's something that she centers on from her data that agrees with OkCupid and also agrees with a lot of other things that we have been saying about desirability and the SMV, or sexual market value. And they kind of more, as I say, more logs on the fire and more data points to actually go along with the already theme that we've established over the last, for me, it's like the last 5 years. And more breadcrumbs for Hansel and Gretel to follow through the forest. At this, Elizabeth Bruch, a professor of sociology at the University of Michigan, crashes into your thought process in this article. Yep, she says, leagues do seem to exist, but you're not alone in trying to escape yours. 3/4 or more of people are dating aspirationally, she says. And according to the new study, users of online dating sites spend most of their time trying to contact people out of their league. I would say Black women are not exempt. In fact, most online dating users tend to message people exactly 25% more desirable than they are. So Bruce would know she spent the past few years studying how people make decisions and pursue partners on online dating sites, using exclusive data from dating sites themselves. There's so much folk wisdom about dating and courtship and very little scientific evidence, she told me recently. Our research comes out of realizing that with these large-scale data sets, we can shed light on a lot of these old dating aphorisms. In the new study published Wednesday in the journal Science Advances, Bruce and her colleagues analyzed thousands of messages exchanged on popular free online dating service between more than 186,000 straight men and women. They looked only in 4 metro areas: New York, Boston, Chicago, and Seattle, and only at messages from January 2014. Man, that's got to be millions of messages. Imagine for a second that you are one of the users Bruch and her colleagues studied. In fact, imagine that you are a very desirable user. Your specific desirability rank would have been generated by 2 figures: whether other desirable people contacted you and whether other desirable people responded when you contacted them. If you contacted a much less desirable person, their desirability score would rise. If they contacted you and you replied, then your score would fall. That is how they set up the study. But the part that, the part that actually struck me was more about age. Now, they confirmed about desirability by race. Asian female is said it's coded as female. For Black men, and women, it's the opposite. So in other words, if you put Black in, it's coded as male. People think male. If you think Asian, they think female, because Black men are more desirable, and Asian females are more desirable in their group. So that's probably why. And the reason the overwhelming effect of white being preferable is because 70% of the people online are white. So that they're saying that might have something to do with skewing the preferences. Maybe. We'll see. He said if there was a site that was 20% white, we may see a total different desirability hierarchy as far as race is concerned. That's what they're saying. But One thing that they said that I'm actually going to pull it from the article. In the study, men's desirability peaks at age 50, but women's desirability starts high at age 18 and falls throughout their lifespan, which is something that OkCupid, their first chart, or actually saw that, is something similar to what they said, where a woman's desirability peaks at 18 and then starts to fall. But in this curve, according to this chart, they say that the desirability for women falls much more rapidly than on the OkCupid chart. And men's desirability actually starts out a little higher when they're 18 than in the OkCupid. So in other words, men's desirability starts lower, maybe like a couple of points lower, but it rises slowly. It doesn't spike. It's not a spike. It rises slowly and it peaks out 30 years later. And women's desirability spikes at 18, and it's a much more rapid decline. And what they're saying is that as far as desirability, online desirability, men catch women right around, right after 25. They pass them at 30. And then from then on, they don't meet back up again until the senior years, where basically men and women are like 60 years old, according to the chart. Men have a much more rapid drop off after 55, which makes sense because that's the retirement age. So OkCupid, if you compare the chart, put up OkCupid's initial chart that actually started this SMV battle, or not SMV battle, SMV discussion, some almost 10 years ago. And the SMV, you can see it kind of parallels what this modern, the study says, but there's a difference. Like I said, there's a difference. There's no spikes as far as men are concerned. It's a one slow rise. So in other words, the guy started out in less than 5, like maybe a point and a half below an 18-year-old female. They never quite get up to the 6 range where the 18-year-old female is. But the thing is that it's a smoother, more even ascension. And they pass up, they reach into the 5.5 range right around 35, and it extends right up until 35, and then after 55, it drops off. So I said this back quite a while ago when I explained the shift in the desirability. Women's desirability has not really shifted very much in the last 1,000 years. A woman's value has peaked pretty much in her early years. Some people say, like OkCupid says, that their value peaks at, I think they said that the value peaks somewhere around in her 20s, 23. This study, which I actually probably agree with more, a woman's value probably peaks at 18. Some women will defend that, some women won't. But neither, OkCupid says their value peaks at 21, 22, maybe 23, and then it starts to slowly fade until men catch up, and after 35, according to OkCupid, that's when they kind of drop off the radar. Well, this one is a little bit more understandable, where a woman's value, you would think that an 18-year-old fresh off the boat, never really been touched, would probably be more valuable as far as dating is concerned. The new car smell, for lack of a better term. And then it will not rapidly, but it will decline, where man's value will slowly ascend. There's teenage boys, teenage men do have a value. It's not nothing, but it is something. Youth does have its benefits, even for a man, even though it's not as valuable as a woman's youth. But even for a man, youth is something to trade. And that long, slow ascension is as man gains wisdom, and assets, along with his physicality. Now, according to Cupid, your physicality or your assets or your worth peaks out at around your mid to late 30s and then drops off. But according to this study, it doesn't. It extends that range from, that, like I said, which makes more sense, from 35 to 55, because what a man is most valuable for is his wisdom and his assets and his value. And a man is at the peak of his value between this range between 35 and 55, because that coincides with his highest earning potential. So he's going to have more value than a broke 18, 19, even 20-year-old for the vast majority of women on both sides, older and younger. There's always going to be exceptions, but for the vast majority, guys in their mid-30s to their mid-50s are going to be more valuable. And this particular chart shows exactly that. So it's one more thing to think about. Because I've shown a chart about a man's earning potential compared to a woman. A woman's earning potential, which is lower, actually peaks out in her late 30s to very early 40s. They said the peak earning potential for a woman is about age 41, and then it drops off. And even she says, how age affects online dating desirability among heterosexual men and women. A higher desirability rank corresponds to more user interest among the other gender. I mean, everybody knows, as a sociologist, it's been shown older women have a harder time in the dating market, but I hadn't expected to see their desirability drop off from the time they're 18 to the time they're 65, Bruce told me. But I wasn't surprised to see how flat men's desirability was over the age distribution, she said. For men, it peaks around age 40 or 50, especially in New York. New York is a men's market, at least according to this particular study. It's not just older men are considered most desirable in New York. New York is a special case for men, Bruce told me. It's the market with the highest fraction of women, but it's also about being an incredibly dense market. Seattle is a women's market, and also the only place where men succeed by sending longer opening messages. Women's prospects dim not only as they age, but as they achieve the highest level of education. Here's another part. I'm just going to read this as an aside. You can actually read the study. A more educated man is almost always more desirable on average. Men with postgraduate degrees outperform men with bachelor's degrees. Men with bachelor's degrees beat high school graduates. But for women, an undergraduate degree is the most desirable. The study says postgraduate education is associated with decreased desirability among women. In fact, Ariana told me that in her culture, in Nigerian culture, they said exactly the same thing. Anyway, I thought this was interesting. I thought that this has been talked about. The sexual market value has been talked about on blogs, man, since 2006 or 2007. And a bunch of people have done these studies, and some informal and some, like I said, can't get more formal than Plenty of Fish or OkCupid, where they actually have the raw data. And we have another sociologist with raw data that is going through millions of messages and tracking 186,000 people across 4 metro areas. So we're getting a finer and finer picture. And what's most consistent across all these groups and all these cities is age. Women's age compared to her value, which is something that has been consistent, not only in this modern age where we actually track the data, but going all the way back to our ancestors 100,000 years ago. The old saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And in this case, it's probably very, very true. You can brainwash minds, but you can't brainwash biology. You can socialize minds and make a dog think he's a cat. But at the end of the day, he's still a dog. And biology cannot be brainwashed or trained out of a particular creature, especially human beings, is what it is. But with that, I'm going to jump off of here. This is BGS out, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.